Okay, personal data in government is broken. Crikey. Why do I say that? Well, broadly, it's because citizens, when they interact with government through services, are not particularly happy with the way it works. People expect more direct links than they currently have. It's 2019. My smartphone talks to my credit card. Like, why is government not talking to a different part of government? Why am I having to take information from one part of government and send it to a different part of government? This is frustrating, and it clearly does not meet user needs. Why does it happen? This is what people broadly imagine government as. It's a thing, and there's a database. As most people know, probably in this room, that's not really what government looks like. It's a lot more federated than that. Really, what happens is departments collect data to do their services, and they don't really share it, and that kind of works fine. We decided we didn't want to do the Big Brother database, so that's okay. It works fine until a service comes along and actually says, okay, I need to actually collect something from over here and something from over here in order to make this work. And they can't. There is no link. Generally speaking, there isn't really a way to do it. Obviously, it is done in pockets, but not by default. So really, services that are quite small, they don't really have any other option. They basically have to get the citizen to do the data collection for them. They have to explain to the citizen what proofs they want to see and get the citizen to go and collect them. Why is that hard? Basically because the proofs look like this. They're not designed as proofs. They're letters or just bits of paper. That is a personal independence payment letter, which tells you about your personal independence payment status. It's 7 pages long. The important information is on page 1. This is a DLA letter, disability living allowance. It's 8 pages long. The important piece of information is on page 2. Typically, citizens get this wrong a lot. They either send all the pages, they send only the pages they think are important, or they take a picture using their Nokia 3410 and you can't read it. And really, services feel a lot of pain because of this, because they're constantly having to spend money in caseworker time, going backwards and forwards, trying to collect the right information, or, like in the most extreme cases, going into Microsoft Paint and scrubbing out the bits they're not meant to have access to. That's a genuine thing that happens. So increasingly, the solution that people are turning to is to make this evidence submission easier. So yeah, instead of scanning, or instead of us having to explain how to use a scanner, we're actually just going to get you to take a picture using your iPhone. Okay, fine. But they're doing that rather than going to the source of the data itself and saying, actually, can we just have a direct link here? Why are they doing that? Short answer is, data sharing is really hard. It's not really clear how to do it well or at all. Departments are naturally quite risk averse, and that's for a good reason. It's because they have a responsibility to protect their citizens' data from being misused or leaked. And so that's a good thing, they should do it. But what that means is that if you want to come along and actually get a direct link into any of that data, or maybe not even a direct link, or just take a cut of it, for example, that's really hard to do. And the hard thing is basically it can take years of legal agreements. So you're talking like 18 months to 24 months to set up the legal agreements to do a data share. And if you actually want to do it in a live way with a digital service and have a live link to their data, that's going to cost you £250,000 to do that. Obviously, that's outside of the remit of many smaller services because their volumes can be far less than that over a year. So if we want to make this data more safely available for services to better meet the user needs of citizens, how are we going to do that? Well, firstly, we need to lower the value of data being sent. We don't need to be telling services everything that is known about a citizen. We only need to be telling them things that they need to know. And actually, the only thing they need to know is the citizen eligible for the thing that they're trying to get access to? We also need to lower the effort of legal agreements. So whenever you come along and do a data share, that's 24 months of legal agreements. If you want to do another one, that's another 24 months. You can't reuse any of it, sorry. So we need to be doing better there. We need to raise the standard of the technology. We need to raise the reuse of existing sharing. So if I see there's a data share happening between like 2 departments, and I say, well, actually, can we do something similar? They can say, oh yeah, we're going to start from scratch on that though, obviously. So that'll be another 2 years and another £250,000. This is clearly not going to work. Enter personal data exchange. This was a project run by the Government Digital Service. And really, the idea behind personal data exchange was a trusted federation of people who are going to share personal data, or actually access personal data, because really it's not about sharing big bulk information, it's really about answering very specific questions. So if a service needs to know if you're eligible for, let's say, a disabled parking permit, that's all the information they get to find out about you. Are you eligible, yes or no? So it's a protocol, it's a technology, and it's a federation based on that idea. Similarly to something like G-Cloud, if anyone's familiar with that, or the digital marketplace, where you get onboarded once and then you have access to a broader pool. The same idea here. So instead of doing a bilateral agreement every time with everyone you need data from, you can join a federation, do all that stuff once, and we'll do it well. Also, the technology is really hard to integrate, and cybersecurity is obviously a really serious thing. So we'll get everyone to do that once as well, and we'll make sure that we design it well and we do it well. So they only have to do that really hard integration once, and everyone trusts it. And if we do that, then what we end up with is auditable, compliant, privacy-preserving data access. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about how that works, but that would be a great topic for a question. So it was a project at the Government Digital Service. I appreciate you can't click on any of these links right this moment, but hopefully we'll share the slides. Come and have a look at the stuff that was done. We built a whole system and a proof of concept, and we showed that it works and it can work. The key message I wanted to give right now is that we need to do something about this now. And the reason we need to do something about this now is because people are starting to do it themselves without any guidance on how to do it well, and they're doing it badly. I missed a slide. Okay, that's fine. Basically, the example I was going to use was the age verification for pornography websites. This has not been done particularly well. It's been done quite embarrassingly badly. Go and have a look at Alec Muffet on Twitter if you'd like to know exactly why it's incredibly terrible. The short answer is people are not doing it well. We need to do something for everyone now. We need to do the hard work to make it simple. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I had some great screenshots about porn verification. That's a shame.
I'm not sure anybody's talked about porn on the Institute for Government stage before. Do we have any questions? There must be lots after that. So we've got one front here, we've got another one at the front. We've got a third questioner. Can I encourage anybody else to ask a third question? Great, well we have three at the front.
Richard Sterling from Oxford Insights. I was fascinated about the MVP that you have built. You teed me up for a technical question. I'm going to ask a legal question and an update question, so
Okay.
sorry. How simple did you manage to get the legals so that it stops being a 2-year process and hopefully it's nice and short? And also, how many people did you get signed up for the MVP, so actually sharing some data?
Okay, that's excellent questions. Thanks.
Tom from DCMS, but not in a DCMS capacity. Wouldn't the hard work to make it simple, or the right hard work to make it simple, just be convincing everyone to have an ID card?
And just at the front here as well.
Hi, Adam from RHE Global. How important are APIs in data sharing? And can you tell us a bit more about the MVP that you built?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you very much. So in terms of how simple did we get the legal stuff? So to give a bit of context about this project, basically it was a project at GDS, but it got paused, so it's not being actively worked on anymore, which is kind of why I say we should be doing something, perhaps. The place we got to with the legal was basically modeling in a technical sense the kind of the data sharing agreements built of various things. We didn't do as much work on that as we'd liked. To answer the second part of the question with why, is because we didn't get a huge number of partners engaged because it was still quite it was an alpha project. It was still quite early. So if we wanted to pick this work back up, that would be the next point to be focusing on. Appreciate that that's a bit of a fob-off answer, but broadly that's where we got to with that. Second question, ID cards. Well, if you want to do that, sure. I think when you asked the question, you heard the response in the room. I think like kind of the point is that we decided that we don't want to do that as a society. If we need to change our minds on that, fine, we can do that. But assuming that that's where we are, then this is the sort of thing we need to do. APIs, yes. So I was hoping someone would ask about APIs so I can make a point about the legal thing being more important. So that's great. Thanks both of you for that. Basically, I can't remember exactly the content that made me think this, but yes, you have to do APIs, but in every case, basically, your government is still... Oh, no, actually, this is to answer the ID card question. The ID card question, it is very relevant, but I think even, unless you bring all the data together as well, you still have the problem of how do you actually access data in people's databases, because really the ID card thing is there for identity, which is just a factor in this system. It's not just about who you are, it's about actually what is known about you. Maybe you could store everything on an ID card, but that presents its own challenges. How important are APIs? Yes, they're really important. One of the things we wanted to get right here was to make sure that APIs, they didn't have to be done the same every single time. No, they did have to be done the same every single time, so that you could basically, as a local authority, you could integrate once and then use the same API over and over again, so you're not having the constant development burden. The MVP is there. I'll tweet about it afterwards as well. It's on GitHub, it's all open source. Go and have a look at it. It's really great.
Great. Next set of questions. So we've got another one there. We've got one at the back. Anyone who's not asked a question before that would like to ask one? And again, any women? We've got one here as well.
So this is a great idea, but the blocker to this kind of thing has always been that there are people in government, your SROs and your CSIROs, whose job it is to look after the data and stop it getting out. And there's no incentive for them to share data just because some other part of government will find it useful. How do we persuade those people that they want to make their data available?
Thank you. Question back.
Chris Fairless at the GLA, a similar question. A lot of people consider the government untrustworthy or an opponent in some cases. For example, and enabling data sharing is a very political topic. For example, doctors being required to verify immigration status, which this would make very simple potentially. What's the political context that you've thought about here?
Thank you. And finally.
Mateusz Obsomalowski from DIT. Purposely stupid question. Why it's okay for the department to get information about its user from other department as a paper, as a scanned paper, and we don't need data sharing for it, while if you want to automate it, you need a data sharing agreement?
Thank you very much.
Okay, so how do we persuade SROs, basically? That's a difficult question, as you know. Basically, I think a big part of what it boils down to is that, like, kind of this is happening, and like citizens are increasingly putting pressure on departments to do this anyway, and that's not going to go away. That pressure to like digitize and get more linked up, like it is constantly going to be there, and the fact is like you're going to have to act and do it. Otherwise, you're going to get embarrassed. As a nation, like we're not doing very well. There are a lot of other nations who are much further ahead than we are on this sort of stuff. So nationally, it's getting a little bit embarrassing. And at a departmental level, there's a lot of that pressure there to meet citizens' needs is only going to get more. Basically, I think that's a big part of the case. Yeah, data sharing is untrustworthy. Yeah, fair enough. One of the big things we wanted to, or we did land in this system was actually making sure that everything that happened was transparent. So that was done basically in two ways. One is there's actually, as part of the federation, part of the network, there's an independent body which basically controls the entire network and which says, actually, in order to do any data sharing within this network, you have to convince us that this is a good thing and that you have the right to do it and it's proportionate. And so that's not necessarily a job for something that's completely government. Perhaps it's a role for someone like the Privacy and Consumer Advisory Group, like to be doing that sort of thing. But basically there is like provision for there to be someone independent who says, yes, this kind of data sharing is okay and it's something that we want. Secondly, it's also possible using the auditing technology that we built to basically say, okay, how has my data been used? And do that in a way that only the citizen can get access to, and say, okay, actually, another thing that we found was that some citizens don't want to interact with any departments. So some people were like, oh, I don't want NHS to ever be part of this transaction. So they had the option to say, actually, no, scratch NHS. They're not allowed to see anything. So they do get fine-grained control, possibly. Why are papers okay? That's a really interesting question. I'm not sure. I think broadly the answer is because it's seen as kind of much more in control of the citizen, and through the submission of that paper, it's kind of their consent being given that that's what they want to do with that physical artifact. Whereas when they're not in the conversation, you can't really kind of say that they've consented to it necessarily in quite the same way. There are much better people to answer that question, potentially sitting 1 or 2 rows behind you. So I'd encourage you to turn around and ask that question to them as well, because that's a tough one, to be sure.
Well, the idea could be the data sharing based on consent.
Yeah, it's possible, although I appreciate I'm out of time. However, ICO have said that's not necessarily the right model for government services. Let's talk about it more afterwards, though.